The fluorescent lights of Morrison's grocery buzzed overhead as Emma Martinez wiped down the conveyor belt for what felt like the 100th time that evening. At 19 years old, she had developed a rhythm to her work, a mechanical efficiency born from necessity rather than passion. Scan, bag, smile, repeat. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers, the same pair she'd been wearing for 8 months, because new ones weren't in the budget. Not when there were 3 younger siblings at home depending on her. It was 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in November, and the store was nearly empty. Most customers had already come and gone, picking up forgotten items or grabbing something quick for dinner. Emma's shift was supposed to end at 9, which meant she had exactly 13 minutes before she could clock out, drive the 15 minutes home, help her siblings with any remaining homework, and maybe, just maybe, get 5 hours of sleep before her 5 a.m. shift at the diner across town. She glanced at the clock again. 12 minutes now. Her manager, Derek, was in the back office doing paperwork. The other evening cashier had already left, claiming a family emergency that everyone knew was actually a date. That left Emma alone at the front, watching the automatic doors slide open and closed as the occasional customer wandered in. That's when she saw him. An elderly man, probably in his mid-70s, pushed a shopping cart slowly through the entrance. He wore a brown cardigan over a plaid shirt, khaki pants that looked freshly pressed, and well-polished leather shoes. His white hair was neatly combed, and he carried himself with a certain dignity that reminded Emma of her grandfather before he passed. There was something about the deliberate way he moved, the careful placement of each step, that suggested he was someone who refused to let age slow him down more than absolutely necessary. The man headed straight for the produce section. Emma watched him select a few apples, examining each one with the scrutiny of someone who had been buying groceries for decades and knew exactly what he wanted. He moved to the bread aisle next, then dairy. His cart was filling up slowly, the shopping list of someone who lived alone but cooked proper meals for himself. Emma prepared her register for what she assumed would be her last customer of the evening. She straightened the paper bags, made sure her scanner was working properly, and put on her best customer service smile. The one that didn't quite reach her eyes anymore but looked convincing enough under fluorescent lights. The elderly man rounded the corner from aisle 6, his cart now containing what looked like a week's worth of groceries. He was moving a bit slower now, and Emma noticed him pause to lean against the cart for a moment. Probably just tired, she thought. Grocery shopping could be exhausting at any age, but especially for seniors. He was about 20 feet from her register when it happened. The man's face suddenly contorted. His right hand flew to his chest, clutching at his cardigan. The shopping cart began to veer to the side as his grip weakened. Emma's heart jumped into her throat. She knew that look. She'd seen it before when her grandfather had his first heart attack. "Sir?" she called out, already moving from behind her register. The man tried to take another step forward, but his legs buckled. The cart rolled away as he collapsed, his body hitting the linoleum floor with a sickening thud that echoed through the nearly empty store. His glasses skittered across the floor, coming to rest near the magazine rack. For a split second, everything froze. 2 other customers, a middle-aged woman with a basket and a young couple by the frozen foods, stood motionless, staring at the fallen man with expressions of shock and uncertainty. The woman pulled out her phone but just held it, seemingly unsure what to do. The couple looked at each other, then at the man, then toward the exit as if calculating whether they should get involved. Emma didn't hesitate. She was already running toward him, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. She dropped to her knees beside the elderly man, her hands automatically going to his wrist to check for a pulse. It was there but irregular, racing too fast and then stuttering. His breathing was shallow and labored. His face had gone pale, and a thin sheen of sweat covered his forehead. "Call 911," Emma shouted to anyone who would listen. She looked up at the middle-aged woman. "Now! Tell them we have a man in his 70s. Possible heart attack. Conscious but in distress." The woman finally snapped into action, her fingers fumbling with her phone. The young couple continued to stand frozen, seemingly unable to process what they were witnessing. Emma turned her attention back to the man. His eyes were open, wide with fear and confusion. She could see him struggling to speak, his mouth forming words that wouldn't come out. Panic was setting in, making everything worse. "Sir, I need you to stay calm," Emma said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She gently placed one hand on his shoulder and took his trembling hand with her other. "Help is coming. You're going to be okay. I'm right here with you." She had no idea if he would be okay. She had no medical training beyond the basic first aid she'd learned in high school. But she knew panic could kill just as surely as a heart attack. And right now, this man needed to know he wasn't alone. "What's your name?" she asked, squeezing his hand gently. "H. Henderson," he managed to gasp. "James Henderson." "Mr. Henderson, I'm Emma. I'm going to stay right here with you until the paramedics arrive. Can you squeeze my hand?" "Good. That's really good." Derek finally emerged from the back office, drawn by the commotion. His eyes went wide when he saw Emma kneeling beside the collapsed customer. "What happened?" "Possible heart attack. An ambulance is on the way. Get the first aid kit and something to elevate his legs," Emma ordered, surprised by the authority in her own voice. Derek nodded and ran toward the employee area. Emma looked at the clock on the wall. 8:52 p.m. 5 minutes had passed since Mr. Henderson collapsed, though it felt like an hour. Every second stretched into eternity as she knelt there on the cold floor, holding the hand of a stranger who might be dying right in front of her. "Mr. Henderson, are you on any medications?" she asked, trying to keep him focused and alert. He nodded weakly. "Heart, beta blockers, nitroglycerin wallet." Emma carefully reached for his wallet, which had fallen from his pocket during the collapse. Inside, she found a small pill bottle. She showed it to him. "Is this it?" He nodded. She carefully placed one of the tiny tablets under his tongue as she'd seen done in movies, hoping desperately that she was doing the right thing. Derek returned with the first aid kit and a folded sweatshirt. Together, they carefully positioned the sweatshirt under Mr. Henderson's legs to elevate them slightly. Emma never let go of his hand. "The ambulance is 5 minutes out," the middle-aged woman reported, still clutching her phone. She looked guilty now, as if ashamed of her initial paralysis. "Thank you," Emma said without looking up. Her entire focus was on Mr. Henderson's face, watching for any change in his condition. His color was still poor, but his breathing seemed to have stabilized slightly. His grip on her hand remained firm, desperate even, as if he was afraid that letting go would mean slipping away entirely. "Do you have a family we should call?" Emma asked gently. Mr. Henderson's eyes filled with tears. "Son, California, daughter, Boston, haven't seen in years." Each word was a struggle, punctuated by labored breaths. Emma's heart broke a little. This man, so dignified and put together, had been shopping alone on a Tuesday evening, and the people who should have been here with him were scattered across the country. She squeezed his hand tighter. "Well, you've got me right now," she said firmly. "And I'm not going anywhere." The The distant wail of sirens grew louder. Emma could see the reflection of red and blue lights beginning to flash through the store windows. She felt a wave of relief so powerful it almost made her dizzy. Help was coming. Professional help. People who actually knew what they were doing. The automatic doors slid open and two paramedics rushed in with a stretcher and equipment bags. Emma quickly relayed everything she knew: the approximate time of collapse, his symptoms, the medication she'd given him, his name. The paramedics worked with practiced efficiency, checking his vitals, asking questions, preparing to move him. "You did good." One of the paramedics, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, told Emma as they prepared to transfer Mr. Henderson to the stretcher. "The nitroglycerin probably helped stabilize him until we got here." As they began to lift him, Mr. Henderson's grip on Emma's hand tightened. His eyes found hers, and she could see the fear there. He didn't want to let go. He didn't want to be alone. "I'll follow you to the hospital," Emma heard herself say. The words came out before she could think them through, before she could calculate what it would cost her in lost sleep, in exhaustion, in the domino effect it would have on her carefully balanced schedule. "You don't have to do that," the paramedic said, not unkindly. "I know," Emma replied, "but I'm going to anyway." Derek was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. Her shift had ended 7 minutes ago. She had no obligation to this man, no reason to sacrifice her precious few hours of sleep. But Emma had made a promise, even if it was unspoken. She had told Mr. Henderson he wasn't alone, and she meant it. They loaded him into the ambulance. Emma grabbed her jacket and purse from her locker, barely registering Derek's sputtered questions about procedures and her schedule tomorrow. She climbed into her old Honda Civic, a 2004 model with a temperamental engine and a crack in the windshield, and followed the ambulance's flashing lights through the streets of Riverside, a mid-sized city in the Midwest where everyone knew everyone else's business and strangers still helped strangers, at least sometimes. The hospital was a 20-minute drive from the store. Emma followed the ambulance through the emergency entrance, parking in the visitor lot before hurrying inside. The ER waiting room was the usual chaos of fluorescent lights, uncomfortable chairs, and the smell of antiseptic and fear. Emma approached the registration desk. The elderly man who just came in by ambulance, James Henderson. I was with him when he collapsed. He doesn't have family nearby. I just want to make sure he's okay." The nurse behind the desk, a tired-looking woman with graying hair, studied Emma for a moment. Maybe she saw something in the young woman's face. Genuine concern, or perhaps the determination of someone who had already invested too much to walk away now. "Take a seat. It might be a while. They're working on him now." Emma sat down in one of the rigid plastic chairs, her phone buzzing in her pocket. 3 messages from her younger sister, Sophia, who was 16 and supposed to be supervising the twins, Marcus and Elena, who were 12. Emma typed out a quick response explaining she'd be late, that everything was fine, that Sophia should make sure everyone did their homework and got to bed at a reasonable hour. Sophia's response came immediately. "Is everything really okay? You never stay out late." Emma hesitated before typing back, "Yes, just helping someone. I'll be home as soon as I can. Love you." She put her phone away and looked around the waiting room. A mother with a feverish toddler. An old man with a bandaged hand. A young couple speaking in hushed, worried tones. All of them waiting for news, hoping for the best, preparing for the worst. Emma checked the time. 10:23 p.m. She should be home by now. Should be checking on her siblings. Should be trying to get some sleep before her 5 a.m. shift at the diner. Instead, she was here, waiting for news about a man she'd met only an hour ago. The minutes crawled by. Emma's eyes grew heavy, but she fought against the exhaustion. She thought about Mr. Henderson's face, the fear in his eyes, the way he'd clung to her hand like a lifeline. She thought about what the paramedic had said about him not having family nearby. She wondered what his story was, how someone ended up shopping alone for groceries at his age, why his children were so far away. At 11:37 p.m., a doctor in scrubs emerged from the emergency department. Family of James Henderson? Emma stood up quickly. I'm not family, but I'm the one who was with him when he collapsed. He doesn't have family in the area. The doctor looked at her curiously but nodded. He's stable. It was a cardiac event, but we got him stabilized. We're moving him to the cardiac ICU for observation. He's going to need to stay here for a few days while we run more tests and adjust his medications. Can I see him? Normally it's family only, but he's been asking for you. The girl who stayed with him, he said. Are you Emma? She nodded, surprised that Mr. Henderson had been alert enough to remember her name, to ask for her. 5 minutes, the doctor said. He needs rest, but I think seeing you might actually help him calm down. He's been agitated, worried about being alone. Emma followed the doctor through the secure doors and into the ICU. Mr. Henderson was in a bed by the window, hooked up to various monitors that beeped softly. He looked smaller somehow, more fragile in a hospital gown than he had in his cardigan and pressed pants. But his eyes lit up when he saw Emma. You came, he said, his voice hoarse but stronger than it had been on the floor of Morrison's grocery. I told you I wouldn't leave you alone, Emma said, walking to his bedside. She took his hand again, and he held it like she was the most important person in the world. Young lady, he said, tears sliding down his weathered cheeks. You saved my life. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't stayed calm, called for help, anyone would have done the same thing, Emma said, uncomfortable with the praise. No, Mr. Henderson said firmly, with more strength than she expected. They wouldn't. I saw those other people. They froze. They were scared. But you ran toward me. You held my hand. You made me believe I wasn't going to die alone on a grocery store floor. Emma didn't know what to say. She squeezed his hand gently. Your shift was over, he continued. I saw the clock. You should have gone home. But you're here. At midnight. Why? Because you needed someone, Emma said simply. And I couldn't just leave. Mr. Henderson studied her face for a long moment. How old are you? 19. So young, but so old, somehow. The way you took charge. The way you knew what to do. That's not normal for someone your age. Emma shrugged. I've had to grow up fast. Comes with the territory. What territory? She hesitated, then figured there was no harm in telling him. He was just a patient she'd probably never see again after tonight. I take care of my younger siblings. Have been since our mom died 3 years ago. Dad's around, but he's not really present, if you know what I mean. So it's just me and them. 3 jobs, he said suddenly. That's what you told the nurse. You work 3 jobs to support them. Emma blinked. I didn't tell the nurse that. You were talking to someone on the phone in the waiting room. I heard you when they were wheeling me past. You were telling someone you couldn't cover their shift at the diner because you had to be at the grocery store, and you couldn't afford to lose either job because you needed both to keep up with the rent and the bills. Emma felt her cheeks flush. She hadn't realized anyone could hear that conversation. It's fine. We manage. How much sleep do you get? Enough. That's not an answer. 4 or 5 hours, usually. Sometimes less. Mr. Henderson closed his eyes, and for a moment Emma thought he might have fallen asleep. But then he spoke again, his voice thick with emotion. "You gave up your sleep, your precious, desperately needed sleep, to stay here with me. A stranger. An old man you'll probably never see again." "You're not a stranger anymore," Emma said gently. "You're Mr. Henderson, and I hope you're wrong about never seeing you again. I'd like to know you're okay." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Time's up, honey. He needs to rest." Emma nodded. She started to pull her hand away, but Mr. Henderson held on. "What's your last name?" he asked urgently. "Martinez. Emma Martinez. Don't forget me, Emma Martinez." "I won't," she promised. "You get better, okay? No more collapsing in grocery stores." He managed a weak smile. "I'll do my best." Emma finally extracted her hand and walked out of the ICU, through the emergency department, and out to her car. It was 12:14 a.m. She had exactly 4 hours and 46 minutes before she had to be at the diner. She drove home through empty streets, her mind replaying the events of the evening, seeing Mr. Henderson's face, feeling his hand in hers. When she got home, the apartment was dark and quiet. Sophia had gotten the twins to bed and had fallen asleep on the couch with a textbook on her chest. Emma gently removed the book, covered her sister with a blanket, and checked on Marcus and Elena, who were sleeping soundly in the room they shared. She set her alarm for 4:30 a.m., lay down on her bed fully clothed, and closed her eyes. Sleep came quickly, but it was restless, filled with dreams of fluorescent lights and beeping monitors and an old man's hand holding hers. If you want to know what happened next, subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on Emma's choice to stay with Mr. Henderson. Would you have done the same thing? Keep watching to see how this one act of kindness changed both their lives forever. When Emma's alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., she felt like she'd been hit by a truck. Her body was heavy with exhaustion, her eyes refusing to open fully despite her best efforts. For hours of sleep. For hours to recharge before another long day of serving breakfast at the diner. Then a few hours off before her evening shift back at Morrison's grocery. She dragged herself out of bed, splashed cold water on her face, and pulled her dark hair into a ponytail. In the mirror, she looked older than 19. Dark circles under her eyes, a certain weariness in her expression that shouldn't have been there for someone so young. But there was no time to dwell on it. Bills didn't pay themselves, and her siblings needed breakfast money for school. At the diner, Emma moved through her shift on autopilot, pouring coffee, taking orders, delivering plates of eggs and bacon with a smile that felt painted on. Her coworker, Rita, an older woman who'd been waitressing for 30 years, noticed something was off. "You look worse than usual, and that's saying something," Rita commented during a brief lull. "Late night." "Something like that," Emma said, refilling the coffee station. "Boy trouble." Emma almost laughed. She didn't have time for boys, for dating, for any of the normal things 19-year-olds were supposed to do. No, just helped someone who needed help. Stayed at the hospital longer than I should have. Rita studied her with knowing eyes. "You've got a good heart, kid. Sometimes too good. Don't forget to save some of that kindness for yourself." Emma didn't respond. She'd learned long ago that taking care of herself was a luxury she couldn't afford. The morning shift ended at 1 p.m. Emma went home, made lunch for Sophia, who was on school break, helped Marcus with his math homework that he'd struggled with the night before, and listened to Elena practice her violin, a rental instrument that cost $60 a month but made her little sister so happy that Emma couldn't bear to take it away. At 4 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Miss Martinez?" This is Riverside Memorial Hospital calling about James Henderson. Emma's heart jumped. Is he okay? He's fine, actually. Doing very well. But he's been asking for you. He was quite insistent that we track you down. He wants to know if you might be able to visit. Emma glanced at the clock. Her evening shift at Morrison's started at 6. I have to be at work at 6. But I could stop by for a few minutes before my shift. That would be wonderful. He'll be very pleased. Emma arrived at the hospital at 5:15 p.m., giving herself 30 minutes before she absolutely had to leave for work. She found Mr. Henderson in a regular room now, no longer in the ICU. He was sitting up in bed, looking infinitely better than he had the night before. There was color in his cheeks, and his eyes were clear and alert. "Emma," he said, his face breaking into a genuine smile. "You came." "Of course I came. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck. But alive, which is more than I thought I'd be 24 hours ago." He gestured to the chair beside his bed. "Please sit. How much time do you have?" "About 20 minutes. Then I have to get to work." "Which job?" "The grocery store where you collapsed." Mr. Henderson shook his head. "They're making you work the day after you saved a customer's life?" "They don't know I came to the hospital. I didn't tell them." Emma wasn't sure why she'd kept it to herself, but something had made her want to keep this private. "Why not?" She shrugged. "Didn't seem important." "You're okay. That's what matters." Mr. Henderson was quiet for a moment, just looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "The doctors tell me I'm going to need some significant changes. New medications, lifestyle adjustments, maybe a minor procedure. But I'm going to be fine, largely because you acted so quickly." "I'm glad," Emma said simply. "Emma, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. How are you managing? Really managing? With 3 jobs and 3 siblings and trying to keep everything together." Emma tensed. "We're fine. I told you we will manage." "That's not what I asked. I asked how you're managing. Not your siblings, not your household." "You." No one had asked her that in 3 years. Not since her mother died and Emma had stepped into the role of parent, provider, and protector for her younger siblings. The question hit her like a physical blow, and she felt tears spring to her eyes before she could stop them. I'm tired," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so tired. But I can't stop because if I stop, everything falls apart. Sophia needs to graduate high school. The twins need stability. We need a roof over our heads and food on the table. So I work. That's all there is to it." Mr. Henderson reached for her hand, the same way she'd held his on the grocery store floor. "What about college? What about your dreams?" Emma laughed, but it was hollow. "Dreams are for people who can afford them. I had a scholarship, actually, to the state university. Full ride for photography. I was supposed to start the semester after Mom died. But I couldn't leave Sophia and the twins with our dad. He means well, but he fell apart when Mom died. I started drinking. Can't hold down a job. So I stayed. The scholarship didn't wait." "Photography," Mr. Henderson said thoughtfully. "You're an artist." "Was. Now I'm a cashier and a waitress and a part-time stock clerk at the warehouse. The camera's been in my closet for 2 years. Can't remember the last time I took it out." They sat in silence for a moment. Emma wiped her eyes, embarrassed by the tears. She never cried. Couldn't afford to. But something about this old man, this stranger who'd become not quite a stranger, made her walls crumble. "I'm going to be here for a few more days," Mr. Henderson said. I'd like it if you could visit again, if you have time. I'll try, Emma said, standing up, but I really do need to get to work now. Of course. Thank you for coming, Emma. More than you know. Emma did manage to visit twice more over the next 3 days. Short visits squeezed in between shifts, but she came. Each time, Mr. Henderson asked her questions about her life, her siblings, her dreams. He listened with an intensity that made her feel like what she was saying actually mattered, like she was more than just a tired young woman trying to keep her head above water. On the third visit, Mr. Henderson told her he was being discharged the next day. I'll be going home tomorrow afternoon. I wanted to see you one more time before I leave. I'm glad you're well enough to go home, Emma said sincerely. Emma, I need your address. I want to send you a proper thank you. She hesitated. You don't need to do that. Really. Please. It would mean a lot to me. She finally wrote it down on the back of a hospital cafeteria receipt. But seriously, Mr. Henderson, you don't owe me anything. I owe you my life, he said simply. I don't take that lightly. Emma left that evening thinking about Mr. Henderson going home to his neat house with the pressed clothes and polished shoes. She wondered what his life was like, what he did before he retired, whether he was lonely with his children so far away. But mostly she was just glad he was okay. 2 weeks passed. Emma fell back into her exhausting routine. Diner in the morning, grocery store in the evening, warehouse on weekends, snatching sleep whenever she could. Mr. Henderson became a memory, a strange interlude in her relentless schedule. She thought about him sometimes, wondered how he was doing, but life kept moving forward at its brutal pace. Then on a Saturday morning, Emma's day off from the diner, there was a knock on the apartment door. Sophia was at school for a debate tournament, and the twins were at soccer practice. Emma was alone, catching up on laundry and trying to clean the apartment. She opened the door to find a man in an expensive suit holding a briefcase. He was probably in his 50s, with graying hair and a professional demeanor. Emma Martinez? He asked. Yes. My name is Robert Chin. I'm an attorney. I represent James Henderson. May I come in? Emma's heart started racing. Has something happened to Mr. Henderson? Was he suing the grocery store? Was she in trouble somehow? Is Mr. Henderson okay? He's fine. Very much fine, actually. May I? Emma stepped aside, suddenly conscious of the cramped apartment with its second-hand furniture and laundry draped over the couch. Mr. Chun didn't seem to notice or care. He sat down in the kitchen chair Emma offered and opened his briefcase. Mr. Henderson asked me to come see you in person. He wanted to do this face-to-face, but his doctors advised against too much travel just yet. So he sent me. Mr. Chun pulled out a folder. Do you know who James Henderson is, Emma? He's the man I helped at the grocery store? An elderly customer who had a heart attack. That's who he was to you. But before he retired 15 years ago, James Henderson was the CEO and founder of Henderson Technologies. You might have heard of it. Emma's mouth fell open. Henderson Technologies was one of the biggest tech companies in the country. They made components for smartphones, computers, and medical devices. She had absolutely no idea that the elderly man shopping for groceries had been a tech mogul. He never said. No, he wouldn't. Mr. Henderson is a very private person. After his wife died 8 years ago, he became even more reclusive. He sold most of his shares in the company, retired from the board, and moved to Riverside to live quietly. His children wanted him to move closer to them, but he preferred his independence. Why are you telling me this? Mr. Chun smiled. Because Mr. Henderson wants you to understand why he's doing what he's doing. Emma, you stayed with him when he was at his most vulnerable. You held his hand. You followed him to the hospital and sat with him when his own children couldn't be bothered to even call him back promptly. You did all of this while working 3 jobs and supporting 3 siblings, sacrificing your own desperately needed rest. I was just being human, Emma said quietly. That's exactly what Mr. Henderson said you would say. Mr. Chun opened the folder and pulled out several documents. Emma, Mr. Henderson has set up a trust fund for you. It's structured to provide you with a monthly stipend of $5,000 for the next 10 years, with the full remaining amount released to you at the end of that period. Emma stared at him. What? Additionally, he's paid off all your current debts, which his research team tells me amounts to approximately $32,000 in medical bills from your mother's illness, credit card debt, and the remainder of her funeral expenses. He's also established college funds for each of your siblings, full 4-year scholarships to any state university of their choosing. Emma couldn't breathe. The numbers were incomprehensible. I can't accept this. You can and you will, Mr. Chun said gently. Mr. Henderson was very clear about this. He said if you tried to refuse, I was to tell you this. You gave me something priceless when you had almost nothing yourself. You gave me dignity in my most undignified moment. You made me feel like my life mattered. Let me give you back a fraction of what you gave me, the chance to live your life instead of just surviving it. Tears were streaming down Emma's face now. This is too much. It's too much. There's one more thing. Mr. Chun pulled out another document. Mr. Henderson has arranged for you to receive the same scholarship you had to give up, the photography scholarship to State University. He's spoken with the dean. They're willing to hold a place for you for the next semester, and he'll cover any costs the original scholarship didn't. Emma couldn't speak. She just sobbed, all the exhaustion and stress and fear of the last 3 years pouring out of her in great, heaving waves. Mr. Chun waited patiently, offering her tissues from his briefcase. When she finally calmed down enough to speak, Emma asked, Why? Why would he do all this? Because you did something for him that all his money could never buy. You saw him as a person, not as a wealthy man or a business titan. Just as James, an elderly man who was afraid and alone. You gave him your time, your compassion, your presence. And that, Emma, is priceless. Mr. Chun stood up. Mr. Henderson would like to meet with you properly, once you've had time to process all of this. He's invited you to dinner at his home next Saturday, if you're available. No pressure, but he'd very much like to talk to you. Emma nodded, still unable to fully comprehend what was happening. Mr. Chun left her with the folder of documents, a business card, and instructions for accessing the trust fund. After he left, Emma sat alone in her apartment, staring at the papers that represented a future she'd thought was lost forever. She thought about that Tuesday evening, about seeing Mr. Henderson collapse, about the split-second decision to run toward him instead of away. She'd acted on instinct, on compassion, on the simple human decency her mother had taught her. And now, because of that moment, everything was different. She called Sophia first, then Marcus and Elena. She told them about college funds, about how they didn't have to worry anymore, about how she could finally go back to school. The joy in their voices made her cry all over again. That evening, Emma drove to Morrison's grocery. Not to work, but to talk to Derek. She gave her 2 weeks' notice, and then she drove to the diner and did the same. The warehouse job could go too. For the first time in 3 years, Emma Martinez didn't have to work herself into the ground just to survive. Saturday came. Emma borrowed a dress from Sophia and drove to the address Mr. Henderson had provided. It was a beautiful home in one of Riverside's older, more established neighborhoods. Not ostentatious, but comfortable and well-maintained. Mr. Henderson answered the door himself, looking healthy and strong, so different from the man who'd collapsed on the grocery store floor. "Emma," he said warmly, pulling her into a gentle hug. "Thank you for coming." They had dinner, a meal Mr. Henderson had cooked himself, he told her proudly, following his new heart-healthy diet. They talked for hours. He told her about his wife, Margaret, who he'd met in college and loved for 52 years. About his children, who he loved but who had grown distant, caught up in their own lives on opposite coasts. About building his company from nothing, working 80-hour weeks, and the eventual realization that success meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. Emma told him about her mother, about the cancer that had drained their savings and their hope, about her father's descent into alcoholism and depression, about the twins' soccer games she'd missed because she was working, about Sophia's dreams of becoming a lawyer, about her own abandoned photography career. "You know what I realized when I was lying on that floor?" Mr. Henderson said as they sat in his living room, coffee cooling in their cups. "I realized I was about to die alone in a grocery store, and my biggest regret was that I'd spent so much of my life chasing things that didn't matter. Money, success, reputation. And in the end, none of it mattered because I was still alone." "But you're not alone," Emma said. "You have children, friends. Children who call once a month out of obligation. Friends from business who disappeared once I retired. And then there was you, a 19-year-old cashier who had every reason to walk away, to protect yourself, to go home to your own problems. But you stayed. You held my hand. You made me feel like I mattered, not because of who I used to be or what I accomplished, but just because I was a human being who needed help." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Emma, what I'm giving you isn't charity. It's not even gratitude, though I'm more grateful than I can ever express. It's an investment. You're 19 years old with a gift for photography, a heart the size of the ocean, and a work ethic that puts most people to shame. The world needs more Emma Martinez's in it. And I couldn't bear the thought of your light being snuffed out by grinding poverty and endless work." "I don't know what to say," Emma whispered. "Say you'll go to college. Say you'll pursue your dreams. Say you'll take care of yourself the way you take care of everyone else. That's all I ask." Emma nodded, tears in her eyes again. "I will. I promise." Before you hear the rest of Emma and Mr. Henderson's story, let us know in the comments what you think about what happened. Have you ever helped a stranger and wondered if it made a difference? Subscribe to the channel to see how this relationship changed both their lives in ways neither expected. The months that followed were transformative in ways Emma couldn't have imagined. With the financial pressure lifted, she was able to enroll in the state university for the spring semester. The photography program welcomed her back with open arms, and Emma discovered that her years of struggle had given her a perspective and depth that made her work more powerful than it had ever been before. Her project for her first semester was a photo series called Invisible. It documented the lives of working poor people in Riverside. Cashiers, cleaners, waitresses, the people who kept society running but were rarely seen or acknowledged. Every photograph captured dignity in the midst of struggle, humanity in the face of exhaustion. The series won a regional award and was featured in a local gallery. Mr. Henderson attended the opening, beaming with pride. He'd become a fixture in Emma's life, a grandfather figure who took genuine interest in her studies, her siblings, and her well-being. He came to Marcus and Elena's soccer games. He helped Sophia prepare for her college entrance exams. He was, in many ways, the family patriarch they'd been missing. But the relationship wasn't one-sided. Emma had awakened something in Mr. Henderson too, a renewed sense of purpose and connection. Inspired by Emma's story, he'd started a foundation that provided emergency financial assistance to young people supporting families. He called it the Margaret Henderson Foundation, after his late wife, but Emma knew the idea had been born from their chance encounter in Morrison's grocery. One Saturday afternoon, 6 months after that fateful November evening, Emma and Mr. Henderson sat in his living room going through her portfolio. She'd been offered an internship at a prestigious photography magazine in Chicago for the summer, and she was nervous about leaving her siblings for that long. "They'll be fine," Mr. Henderson assured her. "Sophia is responsible, your father is doing better with the counseling, and I'm right here if they need anything. You need to do this, Emma. You need to grab these opportunities." "I know. It's just hard. I've been their primary caregiver for so long. I don't know how to not be. That's something you're going to have to learn. You can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself first." He paused, then said, "I've been meaning to tell you something. My son called last week. Really called, not just the obligatory monthly check-in. We talked for 2 hours." "That's wonderful. What brought that on?" "You did. I told him about you, about what happened, about the foundation, and he said something that struck me. He said, 'Dad, I didn't realize how lonely you'd been until you told me about Emma. I should have been there for you. We're planning a visit. He's bringing his family in July." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm so happy for you, Mr. Henderson. James. Please, after all this time, call me James." "James," Emma corrected with a smile. "You know what the gift you gave me really was?" James said thoroughly. "It wasn't just that you saved my life that night, though you did. It was that you reminded me what it means to be human, to see other people, really see them, to act with compassion even when it's inconvenient, even when you're exhausted, even when you have your own problems. You reminded me that the small moments, holding someone's hand, sitting with them in the hospital, making them feel less alone, those are the moments that actually matter. You've given me so much," Emma said. "A future, an education, security for my family. I don't know how to ever repay you. You already have, just by being who you are, just by stopping to help an old man on a grocery store floor when you could have walked away." James reached over and patted her hand. "Besides, this isn't about repayment. It's about paying it forward. Someday, when you're established in your career, when you've built the life you're meant to live, you'll have an opportunity to help someone the way I helped you. And you'll do it, because that's who you are." The spring semester ended with Emma making the dean's list. The summer internship in Chicago was challenging but incredible, opening doors and making connections that would shape her career. She came home every other weekend, and James always had dinner waiting, wanting to hear every detail of her experiences. Sophia graduated high school that May with honors and a full scholarship to the State University to study pre-law. Marcus and Elena were thriving, their grades improving now that they weren't worried about whether there would be food on the table or if Emma would be too tired to help with homework. Even Emma's father, with the help of therapy and AA meetings that James had quietly funded, was slowly rebuilding his life and his relationship with his children. In August, Emma's photo series Invisible was picked up by a national magazine. The accompanying article told her story: the cashier who'd helped a collapsing customer, the subsequent transformation of both their lives. It went viral, shared millions of times across social media. People were moved by the reminder that small acts of kindness could have enormous ripples, that we never know how our actions might change someone's life. Morrison's Grocery put up a plaque near the register where Emma used to work, commemorating the night that changed everything. The store's owner, who'd had no idea about any of it until the article was published, sent Emma a formal apology for not recognizing what she'd done and a standing offer to photograph their company events. She politely declined the latter. She'd moved beyond grocery store photography, but she appreciated the gesture. Emma was invited to speak at events, to tell her story, to inspire others. She was uncomfortable with the attention at first, but James encouraged her. Your story matters. Not because of what I did for you, but because of what you did first. You saw someone in need and you helped, without thinking about what you'd get out of it. That's a message the world needs to hear. At one of these speaking events at a community center in Riverside, Emma stood at the podium looking out at the audience. She saw James in the front row, Sophia and the twins beside him. She saw Derek from Morrison's Grocery in the back. She saw Rita from the diner, wiping tears from her eyes. People keep calling what happened to me a miracle, Emma said. And maybe it was. But the real miracle wasn't the money or the scholarships or the opportunities. The real miracle was the reminder that we're all connected, that our actions matter, that taking 30 seconds to see another person, really see them, can change everything. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I was tired that night. Exhausted, actually. My shift was over. I had every reason to let someone else handle it, to go home, to take care of myself. And I almost did. For a split second, I almost walked away. But my mom always told me that we're not just here to survive. We're here to help each other survive. And at that moment, Mr. Henderson, James needed help. It was that simple. What I've learned is that kindness isn't about grand gestures. It's not about having the resources to solve all of someone's problems. It's about showing up. It's about holding someone's hand when they're scared. It's about staying when it would be easier to leave. It's about seeing humanity in others, even when, especially when, we're struggling with our own lives. After the speech, dozens of people came up to Emma with their own stories of helping or being helped. James watched from a distance, his eyes shining with pride and something deeper. Gratitude, joy, the satisfaction of knowing he'd made the right choice. On the drive home, Emma asked him, "Do you ever regret it? Giving so much to someone you barely knew?" James laughed. "Regret it? Emma, before I met you, I was a lonely old man going through the motions of living. I had more money than I could ever spend and nothing meaningful to spend it on. My children were distant. My friends were gone. I was just existing. And then I collapsed in a grocery store, and a 19-year-old cashier saved my life in more ways than one." He pulled into her apartment complex parking lot and turned to face her. "You gave me purpose again. You reminded me what it's like to care about someone, to watch them grow, to be part of their life. The foundation, reconnecting with my son, all of it happened because of you. So no, I don't regret it. It's the best money I've ever spent because it wasn't really about money at all. It was about connection, about meaning, about remembering what matters." "Thank you," Emma said softly, "for everything." "Thank you," James replied, "for stopping, for staying, for giving me my life back." 2 years later, Emma was in her senior year of college, her career as a photographer taking off. She'd been offered a position at National Geographic after graduation, a dream job she couldn't have imagined during those exhausting days of working 3 jobs. Sophia was excelling at the university, already being recruited by law firms for internships. The twins were in high school, both honor students and star athletes. James's health had remained stable, the cardiac event a wake-up call that had led to better care and better choices. His son and daughter had become regular visitors, and he'd met his grandchildren for the first time in years. The Margaret Henderson Foundation had helped hundreds of young people, changing lives in ripples that spread far beyond what anyone could measure. On the anniversary of that November evening, Emma and James returned to Morrison's grocery together. They stood at the register where it had all begun, looking at the plaque on the wall. "You know what I think about sometimes?" Emma said. "What would have happened if I had walked away that night? If I'd just gone home?" "But you didn't," James said firmly. "That's the point. When it mattered, you made the right choice." "We both did," Emma corrected. "You could have just sent a thank you card. You didn't have to change my life." "Yes, I did," James said simply. "Because you changed mine first." They left the grocery store and went to dinner at their favorite restaurant, a tradition they'd developed over the past 2 years. As they ate, they talked about Emma's plans after graduation, about the twins' upcoming soccer tournament, about Sophia's internship applications, about James's upcoming trip to visit his daughter in Boston. They talked like family because that's what they'd become. Not through blood, but through something more powerful, through a moment of crisis that had revealed the best in both of them, through choices made to see and value each other's humanity, through the simple but profound act of showing up for another person. As Emma drove home that night, she thought about how one decision, one moment of compassion, had changed the trajectory of multiple lives. She thought about how close she'd come to just letting someone else handle it, to going home, to walking away. And she thought about how grateful she was that she hadn't. The next morning, she woke early and pulled out her camera. She drove through Riverside as the sun rose, capturing images of the city waking up, the delivery truck drivers, the nurses ending their night shifts, the cashiers opening stores, the custodians cleaning offices, the invisible people who kept the world running. She thought about the photo series that had started her career, about all the stories she'd told through her lens. But the story she kept coming back to was her own. Not the fairy tale version that the media loved, where a rich man swooped in to save a poor girl, but the real story underneath. The story of two people who'd saved each other by simply choosing to see each other's humanity in a moment when it would have been easier to look away. That was the story worth telling. That was the story that mattered. Not because it had a happy ending, though it did, but because it started with a choice anyone could make. The choice to help, to stay, to care. The choice to be human. Years later, when Emma had her own photography exhibit at a major museum in New York, she dedicated it to James Henderson. Not because he'd given her money, though he had. Not because he'd changed her life, though he had. But because he'd taught her that the most important photographs weren't the ones that captured perfect moments, but the ones that captured real ones. The messy, complicated, beautiful truth of people seeing each other, helping each other, choosing each other. At the exhibit opening, James stood in front of Emma's favorite piece, a photograph of hands. 2 pairs of hands, young and old, clasped together. It was called Connection, and it captured the moment when Emma had held Mr. Henderson's hand on the floor of Morrison's grocery, though no one but them knew that. "You captured it," James said when Emma joined him. "That moment, the feeling of it. I'll never forget it," Emma said. "How scared you were, how tightly you held on." "I wasn't just holding your hand," James said quietly. "I was holding on to life, onto hope, onto the possibility that I mattered enough for a stranger to care. You gave me that gift. And in return, I got to watch you become everything you were meant to be." He turned to her with tears in his eyes. "I'm proud of you, Emma. Not because of your success, though I'm thrilled about that, but because you've stayed true to who you are. You could have let all of this change you, make you hard or cynical, but you're still the same person who ran toward someone in need instead of away. That's the real gift. Emma hugged him tightly. This man who'd started as a stranger and had become family. "I learned from the best," she whispered. "Thank you for following Emma and James's incredible journey. Their story reminds us that kindness has a ripple effect we can never fully measure, and that the most meaningful connections often come from unexpected places. Where are you watching from right now? Leave a comment and let us know your location. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate the power of human compassion and the extraordinary things that happen when we choose to help each other.